If you love the tragic dissolution of a friendship, watch this movie. If you love political commentaries on the wicked nature of caste systems, body autonomy, colonialism, and totalitarian governments, watch this movie. If you have an inner child who can't help but believe in hope when a bleak reality is your only company, watch this movie. If your very nature and soul have ever been called into question, watch this movie. If you want to willingly subject yourself to unrelenting heartbreak, watch this movie. If you love gay robots, watch this movie. Transformers 1 is the closest we have gotten to a feature-length film that celebrates the mythos of the Transformers universe while making it accessible to a wide audience. Although the Transformers are the clear stars of the show, the majority of Transformers film and television projects focus on the relationships between Earthlings and Transformers. However, on the other side of that spectrum is media that focuses squarely on the larger Transformers mythos that would appeal to longtime fans. Transformers 1 pulls off the rare feat of being accessible to new fans while remaining faithful to the source material, all while using the Transformers brand to tell a tragic story of a friendship torn asunder by fate and destiny. It answers a question that has been left on the back burner in favor of a flashy robot menagerie. We know who Optimus Prime and Megatron are, but who are Orion Pax and D16? I'm sorry, I had to. Transformers 1 uses pop culture icons to tell a compelling narrative of betrayal and the unraveling of one's perceived truth. By shedding the shackle of a human cast and the suffocating confines of Earth as the main setting, Transformers 1 gives us a taste of why war has been raging non-stop for millions of years. Hi, I'm Vicky, and if you don't know anything about me, I like to talk about people who don't know I exist. Here on this channel, we analyze character designs for movies, TV shows, anime, and everything under the sun at this rate. I'm a grown-ass woman who is way too emotionally invested in children's media, so if that's the type of hysteria you're into, make sure to subscribe. And if you would like to better understand the method behind the madness, support me on Patreon for only $2 a month. On Patreon, you'll get early access to videos that are ad-free. You'll also get access to my research notes, scripts, and you'll even be able to vote on polls for future video ideas. But if you can't, it's alright. If you don't want to, that's alright. I'm just happy that you're here, and thank you so much for your support and helping me almost get to 13,000. I just can't believe I have that many people who care about what I put out. And that's enough from me. On to the video. The paths that would eventually lead to Robot Yaoi were started in 1984 when Hasbro and Takara Tomy, a North American and Japanese toy brand, decided to swap spit in the form of a cross-cultural exchange. And then bing bang boom, we repurposed a couple of Takara Tomy's toy robots into Transformers. Fantastic, fantastic. But how do you go about advertising a 1980s toy line in America? And so your first intro to Transformers is through Transformers 1. Don't worry, the original intro will tell you everything you need to know.
The Transformers, more than meets the eye. Autobots wage their battle to destroy the evil forces of the Decepticons.
But for anybody in the back who can't handle a little bit of 1980s cringe, basically Transformers has almost always followed the exact same plot structure. There's a grudge match for resources between the evil Decepticons and heroic Autobots. They hail from the metal planet Cybertron, if you could even call it a planet. It's more like an empty, dying husk, replete with civil war. And on the corpse of the space rock, the Autobots and Decepticons are fighting over their limited life resource, Energon. But since it's impossible to wage a civil war on a dying planet when you can't feed your troops, Optimus Prime and co. quite literally jump ship and leave Cybertron. Megatron, the leader of the Decepticons, has no other coping mechanism outside of stalking, so he and the Decepticons give chase. And somehow, even though Jazz is Optimus Prime's second in command, he doesn't know how to drive, and then they crash land on Earth, and millions of years later, they wake up in Reagan's America. And then the Autobots find allies in the two most trustworthy humans, Spike and Sparkplug with Wiki. The charming thing about Transformers G1 is that it offers a lot of levity that isn't really found in current Transformers series. If there is one word that I can think of to describe Transformers G1, it's schlocky. It's classic Saturday cartoons material. The adventures are meant to be lighthearted, hell, even the opening is supposed to remind you exactly what the story is, thus making it easy for any kid to just jump in and go on adventures with Optimus and crew, until the first ever Transformers movie comes along.
You got the touch.
Oh my god.
Hasbro executives decided it was about time to retire G1's toy line and introduce the newest toy line, G2. And I will say, committing capital execution and killing off a child's favorite character in front of their eyes is a very visceral way to introduce a new toy line. Very sane, super sane, absolutely sane, not traumatic whatsoever. You could have just said that they went to go get milk and they never came back. Optimus Prime specifically, however, was the death that created the biggest ripple effect.
I learned many years later that the movie was not a success, and kids were leaving the theater and hiding in their closets, I heard, under their beds, wouldn't come out.
But I thank my lucky stars for this movie's existence, because were it not for Starscream crumbling to ashes, we wouldn't have Transformers 1. Any Transformers media, at its core, was only meant to advertise the toy line, and with the crazy numbers it was doing in the 1980s specifically, it did its job in spades. It was an unintentionally perfect layup, ripe for the right successor to from 2007, and we get the first entry in Michael Bay's Transformers series. Also known as the Bayverse or Bayformers, is the billion-dollar film franchise that ushered in a new era of Transformers. Bayformers went into the public with a simple mission statement. These aren't the Transformers you remember. Oh no, they were lubricating robots.
Bumblebee, stop lubricating the man.
Sex jokes, funny racist jokes, sweaty people, and finally...
There's a lot more than meets the eye with you.
Brother, this guy stinks!
And as the series progressed, there were questionable takes on the Transformers canon that I want to say weren't harmful to said canon, but they're confusing nonetheless, especially when you're a new or casual fan whose only experience with Transformers is the Michael Bay movies. Look at how they massacred my boy, they gave him arthritis. Oh wait, hold on. I will say this about Bayformers, because much like Boruto fans, Bayverse fans also lack basic media literacy, and if you don't say one nice thing about their mediocre body of work, they will crucify you. Bayformers is what helped move the franchise into a more mature and more mainstream audience. I need you to understand that back in 2007, it was almost impossible to visualize what transforming robots would look like in live action. It seemed impossible, especially if you're someone who's grown up on really bad live-action adaptations of anime. Seeing Transformers in hyper-realistic CG and transforming mid-battle was something that I could never imagine as a young girl. And despite all of the shit that Michael Bay gets from the Transformers fandom, I will say that he is a director who knows how to entertain first and foremost. It is still a movie franchise whose continuity is both incomprehensible and illogical, not only when we compare it to the established Transformers canon, but also the movie franchise's canon, especially with the way that they try to make the Allspark look like the most important artifact in all of Transformers lore, but half the time the Allspark isn't a magical fucking cube, and then there's some weird fucky-wucky Knights of the Round Table bullshit. Bonaventura keeps opening his mouth. I understand this is his Transformers 1 interview. I couldn't find the one that I wanted. Leave me the fuck alone. It's revealed Earth is Unicron now, and Bumblebee is just one big fat retcon. I get a little snippy. I lose faith. I lose interest. I don't want any more Transformers movies for a while. And in spite of the indecipherable mess of Bayformers and the schlocky, goofy bullshit that was going on in Transformers G1, Transformers 1 did exactly what D16 did to Orion Pax in the Chapter 2 novelization of Transformers 1. They're going to bring you in close and give you what you didn't know you needed. Spoiler warning for what we're going to discuss in Transformers 1. I'm not going to give you a play-by-play of the entire plot, but the character design analysis portion is going to cover some spoilery material, and I would rather you watch the movie for yourselves. So go, pause this video, have fun.
The Transformers will return after these messages. We now return to the Transformers.
It starts with the sacrifice of Primus, the creator of the Cybertronians, who sacrifices himself to become the planet Cybertron. In this death bloom arises the first of the Cybertronians, the 13 Primes. Energon, the life essence of the Transformers, once flowed freely in the annals of Cybertron thanks to the Matrix of Leadership, a sigil of honor bestowed upon the most noble of Primes. These original robots, through the will of their minds, was able of shifting the metal and aligning it into a new shape at will, serving as the base template for future Cybertronians. And then suddenly, the banks run dry. And the two Cybertronians caught in the middle of this mystery are not Megatron and Optimus Prime, it's D16 and Orion Pax. They're not bitter adversaries locked in an eternal war. At most, they get into some petty quarrels over how Orion Pax keeps sneaking off to peruse Cybertron's ancient archives. D16 is a mild-mannered and polite Boy Scout who keeps the rambunctious and outgoing Orion Pax on a leash. Day by day, they undergo the dangerous task of mining for Energon to battle Cybertron's Energon drought, but it's fine. You can take on the universe when the world is beside you. Orion Pax and D16 are the steel rungs at the bottom of the ladder. This Cybertron hasn't been leveled, but it's a broken system that sustains itself on the labor of the cogless, Cybertronians who lack the gear to transform. While D16 sees a system that rewards patience and loyalty, Orion Pax envisions a future where none need slave away in the deepest pits of the planet, and that future beckons to him in the form of coordinates to the mythical artifact that will make Energon flow again. The Matrix of Leadership. And so, Orion Pax, D16, Alita, and B127 embark on a desperate last bid to change their lives. What's wrong with a little grand adventure? Afraid you might find yourself? As you've probably deduced, the story of Transformers 1 is strangely more grounded when compared to the likes of Bayformers and the first Transformers movie. I mean, yeah, you're dealing with planetary-wide conflicts, political conspiracy, and selective circumcisions, but it all comes back to that fragile thing that is friendship. What do you do when you, your very beliefs, your soul, are grounded to dust only to be built from the bottom up? When given newfound power, do you preserve or destroy? Can you be the guiding hand that keeps your friend from falling into temptation? Transformers 1 is less interested, though it is still enthusiastic, over the flashy robot menagerie that we've seen in past Transformers movies. In a world as detached as transforming robots who hail from a planet mostly made of metal, Transformers 1 did what other Transformers movies couldn't, focusing less on how to fight a war and why the war was even fought to begin with. It's easy to say that the Autobots and Decepticons are fighting because one is good, one is bad. To look at the world with no moral ambiguity is one that is blissful in its ignorance. But Transformers 1 challenges you to take the most painful, the most raw exploration of why wars are fought, by exploring the very relatable, painful, and human experience of realizing that you've been lied to your entire life. Because when Orion Pax and friends discover the corpses of the original 13 Primes, they learn the truth from Alpha Trion. Sentinel Prime, the self-appointed hero of Cybertron, is a fraud. Sentinel Prime took the transformation cogs of a select many, stripping of their body autonomy, their power, their ability to fight back against a government that hates them for daring to live and not to serve. Something snaps and breaks and crumbles within D16 upon hearing this news.
Want to stop him? No, I want to kill him!
He worshipped Sentinel Prime. He was giddy like a child when he got to shake his hand after the Iacon 5000. And although he dreamed of a day when Sentinel Prime would shower him with praise, he now only craves one thing. D16 submerges himself in rage and loses himself in it. He is wrathful, angry, almost senselessly animalistic in his desire to take Sentinel Prime and parade him through the streets of Iacon. But he isn't wrong. Orion Pax has always been a hopeful guy. Whenever he and D16 got into an argument, they've always been able to resolve it, but who is that person in the crowd right now? He's always been too hopeful for his own good, maybe even naive to an extent, and his altruism blinds him. But he isn't wrong. The thing that makes Transformers 1 so special is that it's basically a list of all of the reasons why you would support Optimus Prime, or Megatron if I'm being honest. Another thing that I really enjoyed about the movie is that it actually gave us glimpses into Cybertronian life that we only ever really got hints at in a lot of the TV shows and movies. Unless you're reading the comics, which are a totally different rodeo. Please read till all are one. Outside of the comics, you're not really getting anything that is unique and special to Cybertronian culture. But then Transformers 1 has the Iacon 5000, which if you don't know is one of the bigger action set pieces in the movie. If it wasn't good, I would have written it off as one of those formulaic race scenes that they put into a movie just so that people can wake up out of their coma. But that shit was so much fun. I like how the Iacon 5000 was also supposed to be a classic example of how Orion Pax and D16 are actually best friends and it's not just some empty lip service. The movie is going as far as to say that they're like brothers, even though I know that's a lie. And remember how I mentioned that the first Transformers movie was waiting for the right successor? Well, you have that here in Transformers 1 because it expands on the mythology that was introduced in Transformers G1 by tenfold. Because the first Transformers movie is the first ever introduction we get to Unicron, a literal planet eater who is pretending to be Cybertron's moon. He's also the brother of Primus, and you know, I think the moon is supposed to be some type of heavy-handed metaphor for how he'll always be Primus's shadow, but I don't have enough time for that. Unicron is supposed to literally and metaphorically make us feel like our place in the universe is tiny, leaving the door open for future additions to the Transformers canon, and I fucking love it. When I first saw the Quintessence, I knew we were about to watch cinema. To the uninformed, the Quintessence are an alien species who are known for being ruthless and incredibly calculating and highly logical. If I could describe them with one word, it would be colonizers. But in Transformers G1, they are the creators of the Cybertronians, bringing them to life to have a readily available workforce. Yes, it's just as fucked up as it sounds, which is more or less what was translated into Transformers 1, which is why we also have to bring up Sentinel Prime, because I really like how the current canon with Sentinel Prime is that he's just some cunty little scum who's a two-timing bastard, to put it lightly. Ever since the beginning of Transformers G1, Sentinel Prime has been more of a supporting character within the larger Transformers mythos. But now Sentinel Prime has somehow been made out to be a bigger cunt than Starscream, so I'm really happy that we're carrying this legacy onward. And I know, I've been talking about how dark the plot can really get in Transformers 1, but it also has its moments of goofiness. But you get it. Transformers 1 did what other Transformers movies couldn't. They gave us a good, solid, yet comprehensible plot with amazing action set pieces, expressive animation, and great character arcs that can appeal to anyone. Whereas most media based on toys is hell-bent on parading shiny trinket after trinket, Transformers 1 almost embraces their roots and rebuffs the naysayers who claimed it was nothing more than a child's product. But what is Transformers 1's most impressive feat is how it is a soft launch into Transformers lore and its fandom. I've heard this bedtime story a million times, just with slight alterations. It's great. Introducing Alpha Trion to new audiences as the wise geriatric bot also serves to be the perfect exposition vehicle for the true fate of the 13 Primes. And as I still remembered the disgusting taste of what Bayformers did to the Matrix of Leadership with reducing it to a battery, I sobbed and smiled and gasped when they brought up a lore-accurate Matrix of Leadership and made it the final goalpost in Optimus's character arc. And another extremely intriguing thing about Transformers 1 is how we know exactly how the story ends, but we're here for the journey. People are usually here for giant robots beating the fuck out of each other, and that's fine. I mean, you don't necessarily need to know what happened between Optimus and Megatron, but wouldn't it be nice if you did? Wouldn't it be nice to have some context? Transformers 1 took that to heart and made it their mission to make it everybody's problem, and it was stunning. 10 out of 10, no notes. Although, if I could just make one tiny request. I wish Orion and D16 got into a scathing, heated argument before they got nabbed by the High Guard. D16 went into murderbot mode a little too instantly for my taste. I wanted to see them pick apart each other's worst flaws. I needed the rawness of cutting insults that only your loved ones can inflict on you. I'm a glen for tragedy and good character designs. Hey!
Can we just talk about real quick my abs here, bro?
Hi. This is the part where I would go into the character design analysis portion, but as you probably know with the 2024 election results, I haven't been very happy. It hasn't been a very good time around here. So, I truncated the character design analysis portion a lot, especially because most of it was unscripted, so I just went off the dome and went off a lot of my, initial reactions to their character designs. So I hope you guys won't hate it too much. I'm just really sorry that it's not much longer than it could be. So I hope that you guys can take it as it is now. And this is just a summary of my thoughts. Starting with Bumblebee, the happy-go-lucky, young and plucky shonen protagonist, ball of sunshine wrapped in a can of metal. As a companion bot, or the Autobot who typically has the strongest friendship with the human characters, Bumblebee's smaller stature makes him less intimidating to stand next to. And this was something that was carried into Transformers 1, except it has a lot less of the blockiness of Transformers G1's art style. Now, Transformers 1's team has made it very transparent that they were heavily inspired by the designs of Transformers G1, and I would argue that with Transformers 1's aesthetic, it is a perfect blend blend of traditional meets modern. As we can see with Bumblebee in particular, he has more of a beveled, sanded down, and I would dare say streamlined design. Now, because Bumblebee is the espionage and reconnaissance expert in the Autobots, he is the smallest by virtue, which is greatly exaggerated by his dome-shaped head and his mini fridge-shaped torso. He also has these large shoulders that are accentuated by his soft, round wheels from his alt mode, complemented very well by the softer appearance of his gauntlets, legs, and thighs. Now, another thing about Bumblebee is that he was historically the fastest out of all of the Autobots. But obviously, if we look at Transformers G1 Bumblebee, I don't know how you're supposed to get around with those lemon pepper steppers, but okay. Like, G1 Bumblebee's feet deadass look like the trough of a bulldozer, which is why I think Transformers 1 does such a good job of taking the smaller, more charming qualities of Transformers G1 Bumblebee and then combining it with the more realistic and exposed machine parts of bayverse Bumblebee. Next up, Alita. One day at Hasbro HQ, a witch walked in and then placed a curse on Alita 1 to be the only girl of the group and to be Optimus Prime's love interest. And how are you supposed to be the perfect prop and love interest if you aren't pink and white? Yeah, they really wanted to make sure she was as overtly feminine as possible. And throughout the multiple decades that came after Transformers G1, there were a lot of efforts in the comics specifically in order to give Alita more of a purpose. Going from being one of Optimus Prime's #1 supporters and an honorable warrior to a fascist. Dare I say it's an improvement. So the sexual dimorphism was on full display with Alita 1's design. She had a smaller waist, a smaller frame, she was longer legged, which gave her a more exaggerated hourglass figure that gave way to some very interesting art. But what has remained consistent about Alita is not just her color palette, but the rest of her character design. Because as you can see here, she still has a mostly effeminate body, but in Transformers 1, it's toned down considerably. Some of her feminine traits also still shine through, such as her pronounced cheekbones and the accentuated lip, and she still even maintains her signature horns from Transformers G1. Now, I find it interesting how we have this modern take on a character, but the personalities couldn't be more different. Because whereas G1 Alita 1 was more maternal and nurturing and just a good pot all around, this version of Alita 1 is much more practical, cunning, straightforward, and extremely cutthroat, which will likely come as a shocker to any casual fan of Transformers, but I just think that this is a very good reminder of who Alita 1 is now. Thus, I think the design choices, which were a previous attempt at feminizing Alita, now instead accentuates her more prickly personality. She has the sharp edges coming out from her design, like the horns for example, and she even has these sharp eyes that accentuate her rage. I just find this to be a very interesting case study on how you can have two very different readings of the same character design. Up next, Orion Pax and D16. Now this is something that has to be done in tandem, and I'm sure you understand why. Because to have Megatron and Optimus Prime means that you need to have two sides of the same coin. And in the case of Transformers 1, that can't be more true. Now, as we will see later on with Transformers 1, Megatron is the epitome of hopelessness or devastation, whereas Optimus Prime is hope. A story that is communicated very efficiently with their color palettes. Optimus Prime has always had a bright blue and red color palette. It's life, and within Japanese context, it's also the color of a hero. Whereas in the case of blue, it's a color that's typically associated with calm, sorrow, nobility, and in this case, I would even say justice. The silver in his design helping to further accentuate the purity and contrast between the colors red and blue. Now, in the case of Megatron, he's covered in these dour, moody shades of gray, black, and traces of purple. Purple, interestingly enough, being a result of combining red and blue. But real quick, can I just point out that D16's design is such a clever homage to the first ever Transformers commercial? It is clear that they are meant to be set up as parallels, whereas Orion Pax shines and glimmers much like his audacious personality. D16 has this rather dull aesthetic that would rather just fall in line and blend in with the background. And to even better demonstrate this, we can see that Orion Pax's face is made up with a lot less sharp edges in comparison to D16. D16 has the signature pronounced cheekbones that were present in past Megatron designs, whereas with Orion Pax, the most prominent part of his face has to be the nose, which eventually lead into his face mask. Orion Pax even has these bright blue eyes that make it look like he's brimming with life, whereas D16
Megatron has jaundice.
and as we later see in their second and third forms, this difference becomes a chasm between them. After going through 2 puberties, Orion Pax and D16 balloon in size. After receiving the cogs of the fallen primes from Alpha Trion, their chest cavities are now closed, taking on the form of the grille or the front of their alt modes, and they now tower over their comrades and the average minor bot. And in the case of Orion Pax, as he's becoming Optimus Prime, his alt mode starts to become more and more integrated into his main design. For example, we can see that he's developed smokestacks on either side of his biceps after he becomes Optimus Prime. Also, I like the detail where the rotors, or the little circular motors on either side of his helmet, were left open and exposed, but as he completes his transformation into Optimus Prime, he now has an antenna that sticks out from it like a pair of headphones. Now in the case of D16, he loses all of his smooth and rounded edges. As Megatron, his helmet now looks more like a trapezoid with cutting edges, a design philosophy that is replicated by the planes of his face. His nose, which looked more like a slight hint, now appears to be a full block, a shape that also resembles the cleft of his chin, giving him a much more rugged and masculine appearance in comparison to Orion Pax. And of course, because he travels further and further into the darkness and away from Orion Pax, his light, his eyes gradually turn from yellow to a brimming red, an indication that he is beyond the point of return. If you couldn't tell, I love this movie. I didn't really go in with any expectations when I went to see it in theaters at first, and then I just came out feeling like a little kid again. And that's what's so beautiful about Transformers 1. I'm seeing a Transformers renaissance, kind of similar to Michael Bay's renaissance, but I would say that this is something more intimate. I love that there are people now who are just figuring out that there is so much good doomed yaoi in Transformers. I love that people are looking for the comics. They're starting to collect figures, which is a much more costly addiction than just straight up doing cocaine, and they're searching out fanfic and making art. And I loved it so much that I dragged my partner with me to the theaters to watch it for a second time. And since his only exposure to Transformers was the Michael Bay movies, I really wanted to know what he'd think. He liked it a lot. I would dare say he even loved it, which is why it was so fucking disappointing to find out that Transformers 1 was doing poorly in the box office. Which is why I'm going to let you in on the one thing that me and the Transformers 1 guy on Twitter have in common. I'm here to also preach the gospel of Transformers 1 if that wasn't clear enough already. I need you, the viewer, to go and stream Transformers 1 on Paramount+. It should be out by now. I don't think you'll regret it. You won't be asking for your 90 minutes back. I guarantee it. So yeah, that's it for this video. If you like this video, make sure to like, share, and comment. And if you want any behind the scenes content, check out my Patreon. Every dollar counts. And please, let me know down below who's your favorite Transformers character.
Be my husband.
My favorite will always be Hotshot from Transformers Armada. I think he has some of the tightest character arcs in all the Transformers, and that's my opinion, and you will never change it. So let me know. I've been me, Vicky, and that's it. See ya.